Hey guys, it's Kira and today I'm all wrapped up in a big cosy jumper. I've got a hot cup of tea and some candles burning because it is finally autumn and the weather is getting way colder, which means I'm spending so much more time inside feeling cozy. And although I absolutely love the autumn weather, I'm definitely coming down with a bit of an illness, which is why my voice probably sounds a little bit weird. But because of that, I'm definitely fancying a cozy day inside today because I really want to start feeling a little bit better. But two of my favourite things to do on cozy autumn days are, of course, reading, which is just even better when you've got a hot cup of tea and it's cold outside, and watching Gilmore Girls, which in my opinion is just the ultimate cozy autumn TV show. So today I thought I'd actually pair together those two things by doing the Gilmore Girls book tag. So to do this book tag, all you have to do is pair together some of your favourite books with the Gilmore Girls characters and their personality traits. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. The first Gilmore Girls character is, of course, Lorelai, and we're pairing her with a character from a book that's got a witty or sarcastic sense of humour. And for this, I'm going for Lizzie Bennet from Pride and Prejudice because, in my opinion, her sort of like sassy attitude is definitely the best thing about this book. And in general, I just think Lizzie and Lorelai could be considered to be quite similar to each other because both are from sort of like upper class backgrounds, but both of them are also really sort of unafraid to challenge people even if they are their social superiors, and they're not really afraid to speak their minds even if that means they often say things that they later regret. But both of them are definitely witty, sarcastic, and that's definitely some of the best traits about both of those characters, so I think they are a perfect match. So next up is Rory, and for this one you have to pick your favourite classic. And for me this is kind of a difficult question because there are so many classics that I absolutely love, but there is one classic that for me just stands up above all of the others as my ultimate favourite, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I read this book first when I was doing my A-levels and I absolutely just fell in love with it. I just think it is such a clever book that sort of really challenges all of your sort of moral perceptions of what is good and what is evil, and whether there is really a sort of like clear dividing line between sort of good and evil, and I just found this to be such an interesting book, and I've reread it quite a few times since then, and every time I've just found it to be even more interesting. Such a clever book, and for a classic as well, it's a really short read, so it doesn't really take too long to get through it, but Mary Shelley manages to fit so much interesting content into a relatively short classic, and I just absolutely love it. I don't think I will ever get bored of this book because it is just amazing. Next up is Luke, and for him you have to pick a book that you secretly love but are afraid to admit. And for me, I found this to be quite a difficult question because I'm really not shy about telling people when I love a book, because if I love it, I'll just stand by that even if not many people do seem to like it. But the book that I ended up coming up with for this is Paper Towns by John Green, which I did really enjoy when I first read it, and I had no problem with telling people that either until the film came out, which I absolutely hated. I found it to be so like cringy, and I really just didn't like how it portrayed the book, and so I was kind of a little bit embarrassed after that because I thought people who hadn't read the book but had maybe seen the film would have a very sort of negative perception of the book and find it to be sort of way cringier than the book actually is. So although it's not necessarily a negative perception of John Green's book, and I definitely don't mind telling people that I enjoyed this when I read it, I do worry that the film definitely portrays it in a way that I didn't quite like. So yeah, that would be the only book I could really come up with for this, but in general I really don't mind telling people when I like a book because, you know, everyone has different opinions. But yeah, Paper Towns after the film, a little bit less of a fan. So the next character is Lane, and of course for her you have to pick a musical character. So for this one I'm actually picking Park from Eleanor and Park because they definitely bond over Park's music taste, and he makes Eleanor loads of like mixtapes, and they also mentioned the Smiths in here who I really enjoy, so that was why I really enjoyed Park's music taste. But yeah, I actually really struggled with this one because as it turns out I don't really have many books that make much references to music, but this one definitely does use music as a starting point for Eleanor and Park's relationship, so I think Park is a great musical character. Next up is Dean, and for him you have to pick your first book love. Now I've seen people go on two routes for this one. Some people pick the first sort of like book character that they fell in love with, and other people pick the first book or book series that they really loved, and that's the route that I'm taking. And so for me, the first book series that I absolutely adored was The Twins of St. Clair's by Enid Blyton, and that's the book series that's just sort of stayed with me in my mind as my like first favourite book. I'm sure there were books that I read when I was way younger, but I can't really remember them. But I do remember being maybe like 5 or 6 and reading The Twins of St Clair's with my mum, and then sort of reading it again on my own as I was growing up. And it's a book that follows 2 twins that go to a boarding school, and then the book series follows their time there. And I just really enjoyed the series, and it's definitely stuck with me as a sort of long-time favourite, even though it's been years since I actually picked the books up. I don't actually have my copy here, it's at my mum's house, but I do always sort of think quite fondly of that book series because it definitely sort of set me off on my reading journey, and I did really enjoy reading the series. So next up is Sookie, and for her you have to pick a book that you devoured. And for me, one of the most recent books that I absolutely devoured when I was reading it and just couldn't put down was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. And I read this book while we were on holiday this summer because we were driving from Slovenia to Italy, which was like a fair few hours in a car, so I got on with some reading and I just could not put this down and finished it pretty much just in the car. I absolutely loved this book, it was amazing, as all of the Harry Potters have been, but I just could not put this one down when I was reading it, and it definitely made that car journey go way quicker, so it was a great book to read for a long journey. The next up is Jess, who is personally my favourite of Rory's boyfriends, and for him you have to pick a book that you love that gets the most hate. Now for this one I really couldn't think of a book that I've read that gets absolutely tons of hate, but I am picking War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, which I think is loved by the people that do read it, but I think so many people are put off by like the sheer size of it, and then just sort of have a perception that it's going to be really boring. So I think it gets a lot of hate from people who haven't even read it, and people who are just really reluctant to try it because they've got sort of some preconceived negative ideas of the book. But personally I did read the book and absolutely loved it, and I definitely would recommend people to give it a try. It's a bit daunting but really worthwhile reading, and just really enjoyable. So yeah, I think this book gets a lot of hate from people who just have this idea that it's going to be a really long, drawn out, boring book, and while it is definitely long, it's not boring, and I really enjoyed it. Next up is Miss Patti, and for her you need to pick a book that was ruined by the hype, and for me this is without a doubt You by Caroline Kepnes, which I just found was so disappointing compared to how people hyped it up. I found that so many people had given it amazing reviews and said it was such a great thriller, so I went into this book with some really high expectations, expecting a really gripping thriller that was just going to be amazing, and in the end I found it to be quite a disappointing read, not anywhere near as thrilling or as gripping as I had been sort of led to believe by the hype. So yeah, this one was definitely a bit of a letdown, and the hype sort of really got me excited, and then I was really let down by the actual content of the book. So next up is Emily Gilmore, and for her you have to pick your most expensive book, and for this one it's actually quite a recent buy for me, and that is Awakened by James Murray and Darren Wearmouth. And this book cost 20 quid, which for me was a really expensive book, because most of the books I buy are like £8 or £9, and this one was really expensive. It is of course in hardback, but even so I found that to be a really costly book. And the only reason I ended up buying this book is because James Murray, some of you might know, is one of the Impractical Jokers from the sort of Comedy Central show, and he was doing a book signing for this book at our local bookshop a few weeks ago. Because me and my boyfriend Jay are really big fans of Impractical Jokers, we decided to just go along to the book signing to meet him, and of course bought the book as well. And it is a sci-fi book that I don't really know too much about because, as I said, we only really bought it because we wanted to go to the signing and meet James Murray, but it does sound like it could be an interesting read, and I'm definitely going to give it a try at some point because I'm not spending 20 quid on a book and not reading it, so I will get round to this at some point. So the final character is Paris, who's someone that I definitely grew to love throughout the series, and for her you have to pick an uptight character. So for me, I'm going to be picking Nurse Ratched from Ken Kesey's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because as someone who has really high expectations about exactly how she wants her ward to be run, and sort of really high expectations for all of the patients and their behaviour, I'd say she is definitely the epitome of an uptight character, and that sort of definitely gets disrupted by the arrival of McMurphy, but she is super uptight and sort of really sort of unrelenting in exactly how she wants things to be done. And although that's definitely a little bit similar to Paris in the fact that she has really high expectations as well, I think Paris is definitely more of a lovable, uptight character, whereas Nurse Ratched is a really awful character that I really cannot see any redeeming qualities for. But both her and Paris are really uptight, so that's why I'm picking her for this characteristic. So that is the end of the Gilmore Girls book tag, so let me know in the comments if you think I matched up my characters and books well, and if not, let me know who you would have picked for the characters and their characteristics. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.